Okay, so at this point I have these gaps that I left intentionally in this mold. So I can go ahead and fill these in, applying very light pressure to make sure that I have that depth and that layered appearance. Okay, so maybe this piece can just get filled right in here and then attached carefully. And it won't overwhelm the interior space too much. It's just a little raised area, but it'll give me a lot of depth from the outside. Okay, so I just filled these spaces in, and so I'm just checking to make sure where these pieces of clay overlap, there's a good amount of pressure to really seal them in there. So I don't have to be concerned either with this shape slumping or warping or something because the clay is too wet, because the mold is a nice platform to hold this thing up. So now that this is filled in, I can just trim the top of this, and I'm going to be careful not to chop into my mold because I don't want to get plaster in my clay. That can result in pop-outs and other technical flaws. So I'm just really gently along this edge trimming this flat. So this is one hemisphere completed. I'm going to do the other half in the same fashion. So I've finished filling this mold in the same fashion I did the other one. I'm going to trim this edge and then lay in a coil that I can then do a light scoring. That'll help these two parts come together and have a little bit of kind of a squish where they come together, and that should be enough with this soft clay and the little bit of water I'm going to add to hold these two parts together as a form. So these are both trimmed now. Okay, so I have this coil. This coil should give me plenty of space to be able to score and then have a nice overlap between the two parts of this mold. So you can see it comes up maybe about 1/4 of an inch here. So that's the area I'm going to score. I just use one of these serrated ribs. I don't know who makes them, but they're just your average serrated rib, like the cheapo one. And I just give it a little comb. So that should be enough of a score on this side. And I'm just going to do a really light job on this side. Now in my studio, I just use water to attach things instead of slip. So an important thing about these molds, when I made this mold, I carved these keys into it, which is just a really common way when you make these block molds to make sure the molds will fit back together. But an important thing I did was I left this corner without a key in it. And so that'll correspond here. And that way I know I'm lining it up so my bars will all come down and they'll all match up. So line it up the best I can. And just apply a lot of pressure, pound on it, sit on it, stand on it, whatever I have to do to make those two parts come together. So that should be good. And then now I've made a closed form. I've got trapped air in there. So I'm just going to open up one side of the mold and just lance it with my needle tool. And that should be enough of an air hole so that this thing, when it's shrinking, the air can escape from it and won't tear itself apart. I have the molds that I've filled, and usually I leave these just like this, not covered with plastic or anything, maybe overnight. And so the plaster is going to be drying that clay, so the pieces should come off pretty easily. And then this should be maybe a right before leather hard, like a soft leather hard. And I can take it out at this point. Anytime when it can hold its shape and not deform, I can take it out and let it start to dry. So you can see, obviously the surface decoration is here. And I explained that when I push hard, that ornament goes away. And when I don't push as hard, that kind of remains, and I can use that to sort of build up a surface. These are the areas that I left little gaps in between these pieces, and so I've backfilled them, and so you can see kind of the ornament there. So I'll take the other pieces out.